Chapter 6 On the Road. Times were tumultuous in the 60s, especially for black Americans. Without equal rights, equal pay, access to fair housing or protection under the law, and living in segregated conditions in the South similar to apartheid, it's a good thing that we had our music. The Motown Revue was a real sensation back in the mid-60s. When the group toured the country on the Motown bus, stopping at different cities and putting on a show with all the stars, it was the biggest thing anyone had ever seen. Audiences could see a combination of Mary Wells, Stevie Wonder, The Supremes, Marvin Gaye, The Contours, The Marvelettes, Martha and the Vandellas, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, Gladys Knight and the Pips, The Temptations, and the Four Tops in one night. Everywhere we went, folks were dancing in the aisles, but when we hit the South, the audience was segregated, with whites on the first floor and blacks either upstairs in the balcony or on the other side of the theater with a police guarding a rope down the middle, or crammed together in the back of the theater. We performed at a few engagements like this until Esther Gordy complained to the promoters. She made the point that everybody liked our music, both blacks and whites, and she objected to us performing in conditions where our fans were separated by race. Plus, black people liked to dance, and they couldn't enjoy the show the way they had us crammed together in the back. Esther threatened to cancel the rest of the dates until y'all fix this shit, and she wasn't coming back. The managers of the auditoriums and theaters tried to reason with her. They even threatened her contractually, but she stood her ground. Then she came to the artists and explained what was going on. This was during the height of Martin Luther King's influence. He had recently delivered his wonderful I Have a Dream speech and led the March on Washington for peace and equality. We were all okay with losing money in an effort to put an end to this kind of racial discrimination. It was difficult, disappointing our audiences, but we hoped that both white and blacks who wanted to see us perform in the South would put pressure on the theater owners and booking agents. Esther promised that she'd take care of us losing income when we went home and would book us more gigs to compensate. So mid-tour, the review was cut short, and we headed back to Detroit, knowing we had to start hustling again. With the success of our first #1 record, I Can't Help Myself, released in April 1965, we started realizing that our feast or famine days might be over. We weren't going to starve. This was brought home when we signed with the ABC booking agency to pick up some more dates. They started out by booking us at colleges in the New Jersey area, and then suddenly there was a demand for the Tops to perform on college campuses all over the country, mostly white universities like Purdue, Indiana, Notre Dame, Vanderbilt, and Tennessee. We were bowled over by how popular we were. When we shared this with Barry, he said that he wasn't surprised. It had always been part of his game plan. He started out by marketing us to black audiences, knowing that the Tops had the potential to appeal to white pop music audiences as well. The college crowd proved it. Soon, Barry predicted that we would become more popular with white audiences than black ones. This was startling to us. Of course, we wanted to sell records to everyone, but we didn't count on appealing more to whites than to our own people, our core listeners, our families, our roots. After considering Barry's visionary outlook, which was to create crossover groups like the Supremes, we became aware of how important the Tops had become to Motown. We were creating a musical bridge between black and white cultures, and just as this crossover phenomenon had begun to set in, Esther Gordy received a call from a promoter in the South, one who had previously booked the Motown Revue. He wanted to talk about a spring booking. Before Esther agreed, she asked him about the seating policy in his theaters. His response was, "Well, we kind of worked that out, and your people can sit anywhere they want." Esther was so happy to watch us return to the same venues, now integrated, and see blacks and whites dancing together all over the place. It was a beautiful sight, especially knowing that Motown had made a contribution in our struggle for racial equality. As artists, we were proud that we had played a small part in helping bring about social change. But the more I think about it, the more I realize we made a big contribution to the civil rights movement. At the same time, Martin Luther King was marching down the streets of Birmingham. Our music, black music, Motown's music, was coming out of white people's basements and kitchens and bedrooms where it had never been played openly before. People could feel and be touched by our same emotions. Whites started looking at blacks in a new light. It didn't actually open the doors that voting and legislation did, but it did make white America a little more aware of who we were. They could better see right and wrong, that prejudice did exist, and that people were more alike than different. Whites became more open and accepting of blacks during that period. Stereotypes and attitudes were changing. On TV, they saw the clean-cut, well-spoken artists that Barry groomed. The image that the Tops brought to Motown was suave and sophisticated, like Nat King Cole, Sam Cooke, and Johnny Mathis, who were our role models. We regularly appeared on white TV shows like Mike Douglas, Hullabaloo, and Shindig, the hit variety programs of the day. Eventually, we were invited to perform at the Copacabana Club in New York, which only booked the classiest acts. We started appearing there the same time the Supremes did. If you appeared at the Copacabana, the top tier of the entertainment business, you'd made it, no matter what color you were. It had to be the great orchestrator upstairs putting all these elements together, putting things in place, making all of these amazing things happen. Once the Four Tops crossed over the racial divide and became mainstream artists, it unleashed a floodgate of success. Things accelerated so quickly, with fame rolling in like a giant tidal wave sweeping over us from all corners of the world. Billboard honored us by naming it 1965's Record of the Year. We appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show, finally making it onto America's top variety TV program, which boosted our recognition both nationally and internationally. In the UK, I Can't Help Myself went to number 2. To keep the momentum going, Barry released It's the Same Old Song and Something About You in the same year. When our first album, The Four Tops, came out in January 1965, it didn't make much of a splash, but word soon got out when our second LP, Four Tops' second album, was released. Rumor had it that blew both the Rolling Stones and Bob Dylan away. Fascinated artists and fans from all over the globe made a mecca to Hitsville, USA, to see where the magic happened. Our English fans were crazy about the Tops, like Beatlemania in reverse. They referred to us as the gentlemen of rock and roll, and we were more than happy to oblige, giving us even more incentive to keep up our dapper, super sharp image. We always liked to dress in a classic way, in outfits that could be worn on the street, not like show business costumes, but we liked to add a little flair. If we wore a tux on stage, it had to have something extra, a little stripe down the leg or an epaulette on the jacket. We always picked beautiful colors to perform in. One of our favorites was a wonderful silk jacket, each of us in a different color, white, blue, red, and gold, with contrasting pants. We wore open-collared shirts and the collar matched the pants, a two-toned color combination. It didn't look gaudy, just very sharp. Our shoes would match the pants, either black or white. The Four Tops' sophisticated style went up a notch when we started going to England and became exposed to Savile Row and the fabrics and design in London. We started getting handmade shoes that matched the material of our suits and pants. With a powder blue silk outfit, we'd wear powder blue silk shoes. We started wearing shorter, trimmer English-cut jackets. We were all young and thin, and the new hip style, the pinched waist, wider lapels, and flared legs looked great on us. It really made us stand out in America, where most people still dressed in ready-to-wear styles from the store. We were using the same tailors that the Beatles did, and the material and design was immaculate. It was the Beatles' manager, Brian Epstein, who turned us onto the coolest tailors in the UK. He was also the promoter who brought us over to the UK for the first time. Brian promised he'd make us as big in Britain as his Beatles were in America. We loved hearing this, but we weren't sure that we had the magnitude of music to reach that stratosphere. We had just released our biggest hit of all, and we were blown away ourselves, but we knew we needed a backup, an even bigger tune to keep up the momentum. Frankly, we couldn't imagine a better song than I Can't Help Myself. We were in for a big awakening. When we recorded Reach Out, I'll Be There, another HDH song, we thought it was probably a good song for our next LP, not a single. We always thought we had good ears and could tell when we had a hit, but we sure didn't hear that one coming. We liked the harmony, but it took us a while to connect with the feeling and get into it. We just thought of it as a good experiment with Levi kind of singing and talking at the same time, like the first form of rap, but with more music. Levi didn't use his natural singing voice. It was like he was doing a version of what Bob Dylan was doing, but Four Tops style. We really didn't think about it twice after we recorded it, so when Barry called us in the office, he took us by surprise when he said, "I hope your bank accounts are in good shape. I know you've just come off a big hit with I Can't Help Myself, and I don't want y'all getting into tax problems." We nodded with no idea where he was going, and he just kept going, eyes glowing. "I'm getting ready to put out a song that's going to turn the world around. Shit, when and where are we going to record this bad song?" I asked him. "It's already recorded," he replied, matter-of-factly. Levi interrupted. "What are you talking about, Barry? We ain't pre-recorded nothing close to I Can't Help Myself." Barry smiled. "Duke, Levi, fellas, listen." Then he sang the first verse. Levi jumped in, laughing. "Barry, you say that's going to be bigger than I Can't Help Myself. You done lost your touch, baby." Barry joined him, laughing too. "I'm telling you, it's going to be a big hit." I echoed Levi. "Come on, man, we've got momentum. All of our records are soaring up the charts. You put that out, it'll be number 20 with an anchor." He had to laugh himself, but we could see he was serious and we almost started arguing with him, not believing it was a good song to follow up with. We ended up leaving his office, pissed. About a month later, we began to hear HDH mixing it in the studio, and it was sounding better. It still didn't sound like it was going to be a big hit, surely not as big as I Can't Help Myself. Then about 2 weeks later, I heard it on the radio. A friend and I were in my car, and the song just hit me out of the blue. I put on the brakes so fast they squealed. "Oh my lord," I said. I'd just left Motown, but I headed straight back. I ran upstairs to Barry's office, and his secretary informed me that he was in a meeting. "Well, shit," I said, and pushed the door open, interrupting Barry in the middle of business. "Mr. B, don't call and tell us what you're going to do no more, man. Just do it. We've got a smash." He laughed. "I told you," he said. "It just shot up the charts." I told him that I didn't know what HDH added, or what I didn't hear before, but once I heard Reach Out, I'll Be There on the radio, I knew it was a hit. It just knocked me over. For about 2 or 3 months after that, every time I heard it, in a bar or the grocery store or wherever, I'd just stop and salute the song. It just lifted the spirits. It was a mixture of pop, a Jewish chant, like an anthem or something, an enlightening song with a good message, telling friends, lovers, neighbors, whoever to reach out and I'll be there. Eventually, it became the #1 song across the world. It was a bigger hit than I Can't Help Myself. I didn't even think it would sell 6 copies. Neither did Levi, Obi, or Lawrence. But the other tops were just as enchanted when they heard it on the radio. So it just goes to show, you can't always know where life will lead you. Once again, we learned that there's a bigger plan at work. The tops had always aimed high, wanting to entertain in the top venues in the country, not imagining that one day we'd be in demand in Europe too. When Brian Epstein foretold that he'd make us as popular as the boys from Liverpool, who were an international phenomenon, we gladly put ourselves in his hands. Brian was a young man, just a little older than we were, a nice Jewish guy who was easy to talk to, free-spirited but also a savvy businessman, an expert in marketing. His first step was bringing us over to the UK for a promotional tour with various bookings and lots of television appearances. On the last day of the tour, we performed at a small London theatre, the Savile, an 800 or 900-seater. It wasn't concert-sized, more like the size of our usual nightclub venues. Brian sold out every ticket in the house and invited key media people and artists. Backstage before we went on, he reiterated his promise. This could be great for you. You do the best show you can do, and I guarantee you will be front-page news. The people just went crazy, and when Brian came backstage to congratulate us, he was almost crying. After that, he brought us back for a whole tour of the UK, which was a complete sellout, and in 1967 that was big, really big. To cap it off, he gave us an amazing going-away party at his 3-story brownstone on Chapel Street. At the party were the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, The Who, Small Faces, and every other group in the country who was on the charts or on their way up. It was a party to behold. The first floor was for meeting and greeting, saying hello and thank you, and drinking a little bit, which we all did. Paul McCartney asked about It's the Same Old Song, which he was a big fan of. He told us he thought it was unique. It had a very particular sound to it, and he loved the rhythm. He said something like, "That's some bad motherfucking music." All of the artists were very nice and open, and it felt a lot like any artistic community in America, where musicians gravitate to each other and shake hands and talk music. The women at the party ran up and kissed us and told us how much they loved the tops. The guys said how much they loved the Motown sound. The thing everyone was most impressed with was how all that music could come out of just one building. It was astonishing to them. Moving upstairs at the party, on the second floor folks were smoking hash and weed. Everybody started gravitating up there. England had always been a little bit more open about getting high. Judging by today's standards, it may seem like it was a big drug scene, but in the 60s and 70s, it was all a part of the culture, the way people partied and had mind-altering experiences. It wasn't like we were drug addicts. It was all about spreading kindness, joy, love, and happiness. I think I was having too much fun because I never made it up to the 3rd floor of the party. I had the driver take me home, and it was not too long after our first amazing tour of the UK that Brian Epstein died of an accidental overdose of sleeping pills. It was a huge, tragic loss. Later, we learned that he and Barry had been in discussions about joining forces and putting together some kind of business deal that never came to pass. One of the people who worked in Brian's organization stepped up and continued promoting the 4 tops across the pond. The group returned and we did a series of concerts and remained on the front pages performing for years, just as Brian predicted. We always loved the UK, and we always had a good time there. Just as Brian Epstein had his finger on the pulse of British listeners and audiences, the songwriting team of Holland Dozier Holland knew the formula for success in America and ultimately the world. HDH were as good or better than any songwriters in the world, with 10 #1 songs for the Supremes alone. From the mid-60s until the 70s, Motown always had a presence on Billboard's top 10, with often as many as 7 tunes appearing simultaneously. It was just a remarkable time. From 1964 to 1967, HDH produced so many classic hits that fit both the times and the artists that I referred to them not just as songwriters, but as tailors of music. They could write and produce a song that was perfect for you, and then 2 days later do the same thing for another artist in a totally different style. They wouldn't just write a song and after hearing it say, "Oh no, the Tops can't do this. Let's give it to Martha and the Vandellas." They'd start by sitting with the artist, talking, listening, getting ideas, like measuring somebody up for a suit. Once they'd processed their ideas, they'd come up to us and say, "We got a song, we're going to play it for you to see how you like it." Sometimes, after we became great pals, we'd sit in their office while they actually created songs. Most of the time, we just listened because we knew they were in the beginning of the creative process. We didn't say much. Now and again, we might comment if we knew what the hell we were talking about. But they were so good and professional, we very seldom commented. They were the experts. They were not guessing or trying to get it right. They knew exactly what they were looking for. HDH recording sessions with the Tops would take about 2 hours. It depended on the song, what was required, and how easily the Tops could pick up what HDH was trying to do. Most times it would take only 2 sessions, one for the group and one for the background singers, which took 3 or 4 hours. Then there would be a session with Levi doing leads, mostly 2 days for about 2 hours apiece. In less than 5 years, we recorded over 15 songs with HDH. They had the biggest hand in guaranteeing our hits, defining the Top's enduring sound, and fulfilling our dreams of becoming recording artists whose appeal was not limited by race or color. But it all began with Barry's vision. He had an ear for the market, for what people wanted to hear. He was ahead of the curve. The sound wasn't pure R&B or pure pop. It was a mixture. When he started Motown, he told his songwriters, "I want y'all to write songs that move people, that touch people and make their feet move and make their hearts beat faster. Songs that say things that people can feel and understand. Don't bring me just one type of song for just one type of group. We're making music for everyone." Back then, that was a revolutionary concept, as unlikely as that may seem now. This forward-thinking vision was that of a young man just starting out in the business. Although Barry had written hit songs with Billy Davis for Jackie Wilson, he had bigger goals. He was driven by the passion of youth. In youth, you envision more, you dream more. Barry was able to capture that youthful energy and put it into words and music. Barry's laser-like focus to musically cross over the racial divide was why the marriage between Motown and the Tops was so perfect. Even before Barry, we never put ourselves in one box or the other. I think the Lady in White prophesied it when I was a child. "You're going to be singing for people everywhere." I had no idea what she meant, or that it would be a significant achievement. I probably took everywhere to mean generally all over. In actuality, for the Four Tops, it meant worldwide, globally, and in regionally segregated America. We reached every household and radio station without restriction. That kind of reach, pre-internet, was pretty significant. Once Barry saw how ravenous our British fans were, acting as crazy as the Beatles fans over here, he did everything possible to keep our product flowing across the Atlantic. He seized a perfect opportunity after we'd returned to Detroit from a long tour. We headed straight back into the studio with HDH to record a soon-to-be-released album. Obviously, the songs weren't that exciting to us, and we weren't singing that well. Often there were people from Barry's office or A&R people dropping by our sessions checking us out. Someone must have reported to Barry, "The Four Tops don't sound so good. They're sounding tired." He told them, "I know them boys. They can make a hit out of anything. Guess I'm going to have to go down and wake them up." So Barry came into the studio and sized us up. "Hey, Tops, y'all don't sound like y'all are excited. You don't have the usual vibrant sound you usually have." That got our attention. We popped out of our lackadaisical attitude fast. "Y'all need to sing a little more inspirational. I'm going to give you some inspiration, and I know you know how much we all like to bet." This really perked me up. I loved a good wager as much as he did. "What kind of bet?" I asked. "There's a great song that's beginning to gain steam by a group called The Left Bank, and it's already top 10 on America's charts. I'm going to bet you that you can't record that same song and make it a bigger hit." That kind of challenge jolted us wide awake. "What is the song and how much is the bet?" Lawrence's eyes were gleaming. Barry threw out a great figure, baiting us, knowing a hit was in the making. I was shocked at the amount he was willing to bet. "Are you kidding? You want to bet that much on a song?" I said. We were all looking at each other, astonished, and Levi blurted, "Look, I don't care what the song is. We'll take that bet." Barry smiled, seeing we were all in. "Walk Away Renee," he said, awaiting our surprised reaction. I looked at the other guys. I'd heard the song in passing, but never paid much attention to it. Nothing about it seemed special. Barry glanced over at HDH and asked them if they could work up a good arrangement. Lamont answered nonchalantly, "Yeah, that ain't nothing. It's just a good pop song." They went off with the rhythm section and cut a track for the song, and they played it for us the next day. We then went to Barry with one last question. We told him that we wanted to take his bet, but we wanted to be sure that he was going to promote the song, in essence, help us win. His answer made perfect sense. He was smiling in that heartfelt way that's still touching to me. "I don't mind losing because I love to see your group do well." It felt like we truly were a family. Then he added, snapping back to being the shrewd businessman, "And frankly, it's good for the company. I swear I'll promote it the same way I do for all your great singles. If it's a good song, if it looks like a hit, I'll put it out there. I'll forget all about the bet." With his assurance, we promised that we were going to sing the hell out of it. The next day, we recorded Walk Away Renee, with HDH producing. Sure enough, Barry released the song right away, and sure enough, that motherfucker shot up the charts just like boom. It reached number 3 on the UK charts and made it into the top 20 in the US, with Barry eventually having us record it in Italian and releasing it in Italy, where we had a huge fan base. Our version was the second most successful cover of Walk Away Renee ever. The next time we saw Barry, he said, "Well, what I'm going to do is just add the money you won to your next royalty check. 25% of the bet goes to each one of you. Music to our ears." And once again, he added money to cover the taxes. The success of Walk Away Renee was bittersweet for us, for it came on the heels of HDH's departure. In 1967, they left Motown in a legal dispute with Barry to start their own label, Invictus. The year before, they'd written and produced a string of hits for us: Standing in the Shadows of Love, Bernadette, 7 Rooms of Gloom, and You Keep Running Away, all of them charting in the top 20. We were really upset when they split. HDH had given us our biggest hits. We had a winning partnership with the combination of their writing and producing and our vocals. Brian Holland could put a rhythm together that was magnetic. Eddie's lyrics touched everybody. Nobody was as good as Eddie Holland for writing lyrics. Lamont Dozier would add all that stuff in the middle, those extra strains and voices that floated throughout it all with beauty, feeling, and soul. After they left, they were sorely missed by everyone. We never felt we recaptured the magic with other writers. Not just us, all the artists they worked with during their Motown run felt the same. And while HDH still produced great music, for some reason after they left Motown, they couldn't buy a hit. We were to be reunited again 10 years later, but our days with HDH at Motown were something special, like capturing lightning in a bottle. In the 60s and 70s, there was no shortage of great songwriters in the music business. Even with Barry's great instincts, there was one he let get away. A young white preacher's kid from Oklahoma, Jimmy Webb, who desperately wanted to sign with Motown. Jimmy had a small deal with Jobatet, the company's publishing arm, but Barry told him he had enough heavyweight writers on Motown's label and sent him on his way. After that rejection, Jimmy kept it moving, scoring hits with By the Time I Get to Phoenix for Glenn Campbell and Up, Up and Away for the Fifth Dimension, just as he was starting his career. But back in early '68, Levi, who was always on the lookout for great songs to record, heard MacArthur Park, a Jimmy Webb song released by Richard Harris, the star of the Broadway hit Camelot. It was just starting to chart. Levi played it for me, hoping I'd like it as much as he did. It was a unique but challenging composition, a beautiful love song written in 4 movements, changing tempo and structure throughout. Like Levi, I loved it immediately. It sounded like a concerto, so lush and full, like nothing we had ever recorded before. I agreed it would give us a chance to showcase our full range and abilities. When we shared it with Lawrence and Obi, they were just as excited as we were, so we learned the song, rehearsed it, and took it to Motown's music director, Gil Askey. The first thing he asked was who we could get to arrange such a complex song to do it justice. We ultimately decided on Wade Marcus, the chief arranger at Motown at the time, a producer, composer, all-round talent who was never that well known. Marcus came up with a terrific arrangement, but by the time we had recorded it, Harris's original release had become such a sensation, and there were numerous other covers that had come out by other artists, so the decision was made to put ours on our album, not to release it as a single. Still, we loved our version of MacArthur Park so much that we opened our show with it when we performed live, and our audiences were wild over it. Eventually, by popular demand, our version of MacArthur Park was released as a single 3 years later. We loved performing MacArthur Park live. We didn't need studio embellishments or recording tricks either. Levi could sing the shit out of it, and when our harmonies kicked in, the whole house would just go crazy, especially if we performed it with a symphony orchestra. Even without one, we always have 9 horns. It's in our contract. Nobody could sing it like Levi. His interpretation was flawless. We pretty much stopped singing it after Levi passed. Nowadays, we sometimes include it in the show, and there are other new tops who sing Levi's part, but it never has that same effect on me. Levi's delivery was iconic. MacArthur Park was one of those classic songs that our audience waits to hear, and every time we perform it, I'll be singing with tears in my eyes. I try to pinpoint why it touches me so. The lyrics are so haunting and beautiful. MacArthur's Park is melting in the dark. Someone left the cake out in the rain. I don't think that I can take it, 'cause it took so long to bake it, and I'll never have that recipe again. There's always something that you once did and you left behind. You don't realize until later that it's so precious. It's a love song. Everybody has something like that. Everyone has had a cake somewhere. It also applies to whatever you know that you left, and we've all left something out there. Over the years, I've had such wonderful love, but I think maybe that something from my past was Mary. I left her and I never can go back, but that's life. Now I know that there was an even greater love waiting for me. Like the lyric goes, there will be another song for me, for I will sing it. There will be another dream for me. Someone will bring it. That someone was sitting right before me in the recording studio one night, looking just as cool, calm, and collected. She was still out of my reach. I had to wait a little bit longer. I had some more living to do to be ready for her, but soon my passions would flow like rivers through the sky, as Jimmy Webb so beautifully put it.